Welcome back and welcome to 2020. Oh my goodness. You are joining Unapologetically Black with me, your host, LaWana Mayfield. I am so happy to kick off season 2 on Square Media Network. And my first guest of the season is the amazing, beautifully talented, and just a truly genuine person, Judge Aretha.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. But before we get started, because we're going to have some real conversation for all of you tuning in. So while you grab your popcorn and or your wine, you see this year, I'm trying to start off the year right. I'm drinking water. So those that keep tuning into the show, you know that's usually wine or a little something extra. So I'm trying to do right for this. It's not a dry month, but I'm trying to do right. But before we get started, there's a little something that I would like to share with everyone. And just pay attention, because this right here is something I think that's going to lay the foundation for today's conversation.
You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes. I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the man's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just wanna keep us broke, cause they ain't putting nothing in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't wanna see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor, or the governor, and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws. They the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters. Me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
A middle-class kid who worked his way through college after his father died. Mike Bloomberg believes in the American dream and will work to make it real for everyone.
I want to thank Ms. Sharice Robinson, who is the manager of Yellow Pain. And we're getting ready to shut that down.
And if it finds a coupon code, it will apply it. Here's how Honey works. We're currently on Macy's. We have a 270.
Welcome back. If you didn't know, if you haven't already seen it, Judge, we talked about it before. You had not seen the video. That young man is Yellow Pain. And Sharice Robinson is his manager. So I want to take a moment to thank her for allowing me the opportunity to share the video. If you haven't seen it, go find it. He is on YouTube. This young man has a Twitter page, Yellow without the W at the end, YELLOPAIN. That video tells the conversation that we are having today. So again, I welcome you, Judge Aretha Blake. We are in election season. Please say hello to the audience.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me, LaWana. Secondly, thank you for playing that video. Yes. I have never seen it, and it was amazing. And for someone who grew up in the era of hip hop,
yes.
It spoke to me.
Exactly.
And I think it would speak to our next generation. It would speak to the young people who are my generation and later, who really need to hear why it matters. Because we aren't talking about voting like we used to. When I was growing up, I remember being in church and we would have sermons about voting. My granduncle, who's my godfather, would stand up and talk about why we have to vote, why us on Little John's Island, South Carolina, need to get out there and vote. And so now that to know that there is a young rapper, a young man who is clearly educated and highly involved and highly knowledgeable about our system, out here creating an educational piece through a medium that connects with other people and makes clear the differentiation between our branches of government. It is inspiring.
Because we stopped teaching it in school.
We sure did.
We do not teach civics. Now, as adults, you pay
That's right.
for a civics class. So that's why I was so thankful when I talked to our producer and the owner and creator of Square Media Network, Steve Rutherford, and asked if I can show the video, and I was able to reach out to Sharice Robinson to say, look, I would really love to show this to kick off the first episode of season 2 because it is so relevant. Now, I'm going to, because we got to have a lot of conversation because it is election season.
It's election
and
season.
a lot of people, early voting starts tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning.
The day before Valentine's Day. So while you're out there picking up that little Valentine's basket on the side of the street for your last minute gift, go ahead and hit the library, which is around the corner, because all polling locations are open. And no, you do not need ID, even though they tried to force that upon us.
And there's also nothing wrong with showing your love by voting together on Friday on Valentine's Day. That's a great early voting day.
That is a great date.
Go vote, go dinner, have a movie. It's all good.
Civic duty. That would be a great date. I appreciate that. Judge, what does a judge do, and exactly what type of judge are you?
I am a juvenile court judge here in Mecklenburg County, and so I work every single day with children who are in foster care and those children who've been charged with crimes. So not the best job, right? Lots of hard work, lots of tough situations.
What ages are we talking about when we're talking about children?
So children in foster care, actually the entire juvenile court justice system now goes from 0 or birth Date of birth, she's 18.
Okay.
In North Carolina, we recently raised the age so that children charged with crimes who are 16 and 17 are now within the juvenile court jurisdiction.
And not charged as adults.
And not automatically charged as adults.
Okay.
And that just changed December 1st. And so on December 1st, we started that where we raised the age. It's called the Juvenile Justice Reinvestment Act. Was effective December 1st, 2019. When now we have 16 and 17-year-olds coming into the juvenile system first, and then we decide based upon the law whether they stay there or are transferred to Superior Court.
Okay. So we're going to have what some would think is a difficult conversation. I don't think it's a difficult conversation because when you bring truth to lies or misinformation, that's always a positive opportunity for us to educate the community. But you recently had I guess they would call it expose, or they did their own level of investigation. I did not see you anywhere in the video, but we do want to play a clip from comments from reporters from, I guess, an investigation that they did recently regarding your work as a judge. And with that, we are getting ready to play this, so bear with me as I pull it up on the screen. And we are going to make this large. And right, the interview, just the pictures, because this is the tagline that they used on this, that dozens of families in limbo as a Mecklenburg County judge takes years to enter orders. Now on this one, I'm going. And, of course, we have commercials. And modern technology as I attempt to maneuver what I'm doing. And that would be my... Get this link open right. See, my computer doesn't even want to acknowledge this nonsense.
I don't believe it.
Right. Even Mac know that this don't make no sense. Because, listen.
Leaving dozens of families in limbo after refusing to enter orders in their cases for more than 2 years.
2 years. WBTV's chief investigative reporter Nick Oxner has found that not only is she not doing her job, she's seldom working a full day. Nick Jones is now in studio with more on this. Nick. Yeah, Jamie Maureen. Judge Aretha Blake took the bench in January 2017. Since then, she's racked up more than 50 cases involving things like child custody or child support, where she hasn't entered an order, all more than 2 years old. But her failure to do her job hasn't brought any consequences for her. Maybe because people are afraid to speak out. I contacted more than a dozen people to talk about Judge Blake's delayed orders before I found one woman willing to talk, and only if we took steps to protect her identity. Everyone else was afraid of the retaliation they'd face for speaking out about a judge who apparently just won't do her job.
Okay, we're going to stop that right there because I want us to have a conversation about it. Because they say there's 50 cases since 2017, I believe they just mentioned. And you've been in office since 2017. How many cases do you remember having in 2017?
In 2017, in family court, I heard a total of 696 hearings and trials.
Okay, let's back up. You heard how many?
696.
Okay. What's the average time? Because I don't know, and there's possibly a lot of people out there that don't understand how a trial or a case, the hearing, what the process is of that. Because they make it seem like 50 since 2017 is this extremely large number, and you just shared almost 700 cases. So walk us through a little bit of what that looks like, as much as you can share with us.
So let me start by saying this. First and foremost, that is the first time I've ever seen that video. And so it is and I've heard responses to it. I, of course, was, you probably saw the first video when I was ambushed at the Tuesday Morning Breakfast Forum to get on camera, even though I said I did not want to be interviewed. There was an assistance that, despite my firm statement that I was not going to get on camera, that by any means the reporter felt entitled to get me in camera. And that included showing up at Sarah Stevenson's Tuesday Morning Breakfast Forum and disrupting that event and the attendees there.
They tend to do that.
So I will start with that. Secondly, and most importantly, I do not have 52 cases that I heard in 2017 that have not had orders entered. I've issued a statement to that regard. I issued that statement the next day after the story came out. That statement is posted on my website at judgeblake.com. And it was an open letter to the entire community. That statement was sent to WBTV as well as a demand for a retraction, which has not happened.
They don't do that, but they love to attack. So help us
So now I will
understand.
talk to you about family court.
Yes.
So I started and joined the bench in 2017. So January 1st, 2017, I was honored to become your district court judge, and I was assigned to family court. There are 7 family court judges in Mecklenburg County. And just to give you an idea of the volume, in fiscal year 18-19, approximately 12,000 family court cases were filed in Mecklenburg County. So 12,000 cases for your 7 family court judges.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question because a lot of people might not know the difference between the boundary lines of Mecklenburg County and City of Charlotte. So that's cases that you're hearing from what area to what area?
So all of Mecklenburg County, from parts of Cornelius to Huntersville, Pineville, Matthews, Steel Creek area where I live, of course, Uptown University, the entire county is included.
So 12,000 cases
Yes.
came before 7 judges.
Correct.
Okay.
So they were filed in that case. And I want you to understand that in that fiscal year, there may have been 12,000 new cases filed, but family court cases go on for a while. And one thing I want you to remember, that you may file a case for custody when a child is 1 month old. And I have had 1 month olds in my courtroom or in cases. And that case stays with the courts and could be reopened until the child turns 18.
Wow.
And so there were cases that were on my docket in January of 2017 that had file numbers that started with 000 and 04 because these little babies, even though it's 2017, weren't 18 yet. And so if the parents filed something, a motion for modification, it was reopened. And then it was heard again before me.
So as a judge, when you come in, like with most jobs, work that was already in process, cases, that were already in process, those now become your cases split between you and the 6 other judges.
That's right. And so when I came in, I took over a track. So we have 7 tracks in family court. And so I took over a track for a judge who'd been handling those cases. And so as of January 1st, I took over. And at that time, if I recall, there were approximately 700, maybe just under 700 cases that were already active.
Okay, so you come
day
into
one.
700 active cases.
Yes, on day 1.
So let me back up. When you were sworn in January 1, how many of the other 6 judges were sworn in at the same time, or were you the newest judge coming in?
I was a new judge on the team.
Okay.
And so
So the others had been there for however number of years prior to you.
Correct. We have some
Okay.
very experienced family court judges, some of whom have been there for over 10 years
Okay.
doing family court work. And so I came in as a new judge on one of the hardest tracks there is in our district court, I have to just say, because of the volume and the complexity. Because I want you to understand, in Mecklenburg County, I know when we think about family court and custody and, we think family court, we think just divorce, right? Divorce is probably the simplest thing we do here. That's mostly a paper process in Mecklenburg County. But when you come to things like alimony, equitable distribution of property at the end of a marriage, custody, in Mecklenburg County, where there are NFL players, there are basketball players, there are high-paid executives, there are cases I dealt with where I was trying to distribute millions of dollars between individuals. But those cases were just as important where I was trying to distribute $20,000 between 2 individuals. And so the cases varied in complexity and in the amount. And so some trials would last, 2 hours where we can get in and out and kind of deal with some of the custody child support issues. If folks are W-2 employees, we get pay stubs and I do some calculations and we can get them out.
And they weren't challenging it. They were at the place where they had come to an agreement that, okay,
yes, some
whatever
folks
the
come
judge.
to an agreement, and I enter the order, we can do that.
Okay.
In other cases, I get binders and boxes. When I say binders, I'm talking, I leave a trial with 6 to 8, sometimes 12, 4-inch binders full of exhibits.
For one case?
For one case.
Okay.
I had one case that lasted 4 days. It was a 4-day trial. on many issues that dealt with millions of dollars, and over $500,000 in attorney's fees alone. Wow. And that case, took those days, and I take notes. I took notes a lot in family court every single day on my computer every time I'm in trial. And that case had 92 pages of notes that I typed. Wow. To make sure that I understood which evidence I wanted to consider and could write an order and consider that and examine all the evidence. And so that's what family court is.
Because I think that's where there's a challenge. So I really appreciate the fact that you're explaining family court, because I think a lot of times people think either or, divorce or children, and that it is this umbrella that encompasses all types of complexity.
Absolutely. So I'll just include, so we have divorce, which is, again, more of a paper process. Very rarely in Mecklenburg County do we have contested divorces. But child support, child custody, distribution of marital property, alimony claims, post-separation support, temporary child custody, and then domestic violence also falls into family court. Okay. Although we have a domestic violence court, in Mecklenburg County, we are what we call a family court district, meaning it is one judge, one family. And so anything that happens with that family comes back to this court.
But there's benefits to that, because I'm thinking the ideal was to not let someone fall through the cracks, because by you being that judge that's familiar with that family, especially that child who has grown up, right, or either of those parents over a period of years, you're able to track the progress or the challenges.
Absolutely. I absolutely see the benefit and value of that process. We do the same process in juvenile court where I sit now, because, again, things happen in a family. And as you come back and as the cases continue to get reopened, or if you're in the middle of a trial, or, for example, one of the things is, as you may know, our domestic violence court is a separate courtroom. And if you file an ex parte order, you go to that courtroom to decide whether or not there's an emergency order.
Ex parte order?
An ex parte order is the first order you could file for domestic violence when you go and say there's an emergency, I need emergency protection for 10 days. And often those are granted. And then you have to come back to have a trial on whether or not you get a 1-year order.
Thank you for explaining that, because we may have some viewers out there that may be in a situation and they don't know the first step, and they might be in a situation where they're in a city where they don't have friends, don't have family to help them. So this is also an opportunity for us to educate the community on how to utilize the services that may be available to them.
Absolutely. And so I will just continue on that note just to say this. As a judge, I answer phone calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, or folks who have gone down to the magistrate's office because they're seeking domestic violence protective orders. I don't want anyone to think that because the courthouse is closed that you cannot get the protection and help you need. We are on call. It is a disturbance to my family, and I know my husband doesn't like the phone ring in the middle of the night, but he also knows I will always answer. He knows why my ringer stays on, because in issues, domestic violence is a serious thing in our community.
Exactly.
And so it is important to me to be one of the judges, and not all of us do it, but many of us do, who says, I am willing to answer the phone when there is an issue. And so please, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, Safe Alliance now, we've started a new kind of family justice model here. It's led by our wonderful district attorney and many others, where now we actually have electronic filing for domestic violence orders. Beautiful. So you go to the Safe Alliance office, and instead of experience what can be traumatic of coming to the courthouse, you can actually have a video conference with the judge to get that first order in place. You don't have to come after experiencing violence, have to kind of then build yourself up to show up at the courthouse and be in this public area telling your story. It's now done by video. Wow. And so please take advantage of that too. It's a huge step forward for our community.
So I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Yes.
After us watching that video together and hearing, because again, you weren't interviewed during the actual process or whatever investigation that they did, how does that make you feel as someone who has committed your life to service? And I say committed your life to service because I know for the 8 years that I served in public office in Charlotte, I watched your work. I watched you move. I watched you maneuver. I still watch you. I support you completely, but I need the community to understand, one, that we're still human, because they think as elected officials and even appointed officials, you don't have feelings. But I want to give an opportunity for us to have a conversation to know how you feel seeing something like that be said about you, knowing who you are as a person, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a soror. Even though I am Me Phi Me fraternity, I support the sorority you are a part of. I want to give you a moment to share that.
It has been a tough week. And I think part of the reason it was so tough is not just that the allegations in the story were untrue, because I know I'm not the only person faced with untruths. Attacks come from left and right, and I get that. But that people some folks so easily wanted to buy into it. And after being here for 18 years, I moved here in 2002, right after law school to start a job, and falling in love with this community and serving the families and children in this community, not just as a judge and not just as a lawyer, but as a community servant, showing up early, staying late to work and provide opportunities for the children of this community, and not for recognition or, awards or anything like that, but because, frankly, there are just some children in this community that reminded me of me and my cousins and my friends in Red Top, South Carolina. On that little dirt road where I grew up, those kids reminded me of us. And I knew.
It's okay. We human, and it's okay to be human.
And I knew that but for the investment of folks coming into our neighborhood to make sure we had a park or we got free lunch, to make sure that it was within walking distance, to make sure that I had free tutoring, to make sure that when my mama worked at the grocery store and my daddy was moving furniture and they were working hard, that me and my brother and my cousins had somewhere safe to go.
Right.
Every summer, I knew that coming into this community and finding that here and finding needs here, that I had to step up and do something. And I did something. And I've been doing something from day one. Through the McCrory Ride, through the Council for Children's Rights, through the Mecklenburg Bar Foundation, through all kinds of work. And so to know that, and to know that I had invested so much time, effort, energy, and faith in a community that I love, and that those within the community, those within my profession, would so easily discount that over a story that was not credible, that had no proof, over a story that was clearly politically motivated, was hurtful. Yeah. And it hurt me to my core. For a minute, it did. It was shocking, because I do think that folks forget that judges are people too. I say that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not the first elected official that will be attacked and have to face falsehoods and concerted efforts to get a seat. And I wish I could be the last, but it still hurt.
Yeah.
And it did not break me. I'm still standing, because what ended up happening is, and I'm so thankful, I know many people watching on Facebook, and I thank you, those on Instagram, those who have texted me and called me, the pastors who have stood up and spoke on my behalf in churches where I was not even attending, to say we stand with you, who just continued to stand with me because they knew who I am as a person. And so for that brief minute, it felt like, did they just not know who I am? Did they not who I am? And did they not see my heart? Did not see how hard I worked? And I guess that was the other piece of it. When I started this job, and I don't talk about this much because I don't like to cry, but I'm already crying. So here we go.
But people need to see that you're human. So share.
When I ran for election in 2016, I had a primary with three other opponents. Then I won first place and went to the general election, and won first place there. So I won. Well, in between, in about August, I got a phone call from my brother, and he was just crying and frantic. And I am the calm one, I keep it together. And I was at work, and I said, well, let me call you back. I'm walking downstairs, and he was telling me that my dad was on the floor. He could not get him up, and he didn't know what to do. And he's still my little brother, although he's a grown man. And so I said, okay, call 911 and figure that out. That day, my dad went to the hospital. He was in a coma. They told my mom that they could do a surgery. but there is only 10% chance that he would survive. And she said, well, you guys have 10%. I'm going to trust God for the other 90% and go ahead and do the surgery. And so they did the surgery, and I'm running for office, and I get this call, and of course I run down to Charleston to see about him. He's in the Medical University Hospital that provided amazing care, and I thank them. And so I get down there, and he's had the surgery, and it just came out of the blue. We don't know what happened, what had gone on. And I remember months before that, I said, something's off with him. He was kind of stammering. It's just something going on. So pay attention to your people and check in. When your gut says something, go with it. And so my daddy had the surgery, and then he was in a coma for 40 days. And I was running for office. And I sat in Charleston by his bedside with my mom, and my daughter was there too. We pretty much took over this. We took over a waiting room at the Medical University. We had, piles of food everywhere. Family just kept coming. My dad had 13 brothers and sisters. And so I had aunts and cousins. And I realized my grandma just passed away, that I had, 42 first cousins. And then she had 86 great grandchildren. So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's a lot of us that kept coming in and out. And then that same weekend, my sorority chapter, the Charlotte Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, had its sorority retreat in Charleston that weekend. And they started flooding in. Someone started doing my daughter's hair. Because we just ran out of town. They went shopping. I had to go do something. To cover my mom, made sure my mom ate. And it was the first feeling of knowing community. And when they and others got back to Charleston, I sat in Charleston for 2 weeks. But no one could tell, because my campaign kept going on as if I was in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. People were showing up and they were doing things. But eventually I had to come back here because my daughter had to start school. It was August. And I ran a campaign without ever telling anyone my daddy was in a coma, that my heart was in Charleston. And I smiled, and I showed up, and I kept coming. And I kept talking about the fact that I wanted to serve this community, continue to serve, and to bring to the bench a perspective and fairness and integrity and respect. And I did that fighting through a pain that I wouldn't even let myself accept. And so when I started this job, that was in 2017, he woke up, thank God. He woke up. But he woke up, we had a long way to go. And so he ended up going to a rehab center and went down to Savannah eventually. And it wasn't looking good. And at one point, my mom said, you know what, I'm bringing my husband home. Yes, he can't walk, he can't eat, he can't move. I learned about love through this woman. But I'm bringing my husband home. Now, I'm glad to say that he's back to himself. He's driving, and God is good. But what I say is, when I came into this job, I started January 1st with all that weight on me.
Right.
With knowing that my personal life had all these challenges, but I still gave my all to try to do this job. And so knowing that, and knowing the challenge that the weight I carried with me over the many, many, many months it took some to recover, of me running back and forth down to Charleston on the weekends, while also trying to do cases at night and taking care of my child then as a single mother, that I give a lot to this job. And I try really hard. Yet here I am.
Yeah.
Where one single story can have folks online and on Facebook and saying negative things who don't know me, who are sending me emails that are just deplorable.
Yes.
And when there's a news outlet will take no accountability for the fact that they did not do any real investigation. And it is not up to me to prove anyone's story that is false or to
clearly
disprove it.
Biased. And it is not the first time, and you are not the first, and unfortunately you will not be the last, because there is a attack that happens specifically on black women in politics. Because even with our Congresswoman for the 12th Congressional District, for Congresswoman Alma Adams, when she was transitioning her mother to go home to glory, the minuscule amount of time that she took to be there, they blew up to make it seem like she wasn't doing her job in Washington, D.C., when she has done more for the district, when the district included Greensboro area, and since they redrew the line, she has done more for the district than we had seen in a long time. She was the perfect replacement for Congressman Mel Watt, and she has done her job. You have done your job, but to know that you had to step into these 700 plus cases with the weight of your heart being in Charleston and then being in Atlanta with your father. Thank you. So you've heard thank you, but I want to tell you thank you. And it does not go unnoticed. And as someone who has taken many a hits and many attacks, we were built for this. From the beginning of time, as black women, we were built for it. It hurts when it happens, but we were built for it. But it's also a test for you to know who is really there for you. And some who we assume may be there for us that really aren't, versus those who we would never think would be in our corner will come out of nowhere to be a defense. When you mention religious leaders, it's funny because I tried to shorten it. I don't know if you received the video. My pastor on Sunday, Clifford Matthews at St. Luke Missionary Baptist Church, he opened up our service speaking to the goodness of you. I videotaped the whole piece. I didn't want to put it on Facebook because I knew we were going to see each other. So I wanted you to see it first, which I'll play for you later when we get through this conversation. And then I would gladly share it. But you do have a lot of support out there. So I just wanted to give a moment for you to be able to release that, because that also walking around with that energy and someone being able to put a negative reporting out there without doing the research, because they put no context. They had no context in the fact that you had over 700 cases. Do you remember about how many cases I believe you told me how many cases you actually heard in 2017, your first year?
So in family court, it was about 696. And then in addition, there were 1,125 child support cases when I presided in child support court. And I honestly could not count how many cases I did in domestic violence court. I presided in domestic violence court for, I believe, 4 to 5 weeks.
So between 1,800 to, we'll say, 2,200 cases, our community, and I need you all that are watching and that are tuning in and that will share this and talk about this later. I need you to really look at that picture of almost 2,200 plus cases, clearly over 1,800 cases in 1 year. The fact that a news reporting agency, which they wonder why we don't put a lot of energy in what they have to say, would make a whole expose on 50 cases when there were over 1,800 that you presided over at different levels. So we done gave that all the energy that we're going to give that. What I would love for you to do, because that's just a snapshot, you shared the other night at the O'Leary event some other numbers to give people an idea of the work that you've done. I would love for you to just share that with me so that I can be better educated. Okay. And also with those that are tuning in. And everyone, please, if you have any questions, please utilize our social media. Ask the questions in the comment section on YouTube. Ask questions on our Facebook Live page. I believe we have a watch party that's up right now on Unapologetically Black with LaWana Mayfield on our Facebook page. If you have any questions, please send them in. The judge will gladly answer them. If you have any for me, I'll gladly answer. But what would you like for us to know?
So I think it is important to understand just what happens down at the courthouse. So a couple of things for the community in general. I want to underscore how many folks, we talk a lot about law, when we think about the courthouse, we always picture lawyers. Mm-hmm. But I want you to know in family court, there is a significant number of cases where there are no lawyers involved.
Really?
And to the point where there's a 3-week session in family court. Every 3 weeks, there's one whole day devoted to cases where it's just individuals that have cases. So we call it double pro se day, where both parties are self-represented. And on those days, we hear 20 to 30, sometimes 35 cases in that one day to address those cases. And so one of the things I think is important is that we have to remember in our community that no one is entitled to an appointed lawyer in family court. And so those self-represented folks, if you can't hire a lawyer, then you're coming in there yourself. And it's really important to have a judge on the bench, having been on both sides, right, to say, to listen to someone and to be able to understand where they come from. I will tell you a funny story. I had two folks who were there from Charleston. And for those, Charleston folks, we speak fast and we have, our own diction at times. And I know I don't have it all the time now, but let me get really excited or really upset and it's there. And so, or with my mom. But it was interesting because some of the people in the courtroom, just language, could not understand because of the pace of the dialect and the talking what was going on. But I'm having conversations. And so it was interesting. I didn't realize until later when someone approached me and said, I really have no clue what happened. It hit me that that's why experience matters. That's why being able to connect matters. And what would have happened if someone was on the bench who could not understand what was going on with that family just because they spoke a little differently. Right. And so that just opened my eyes to making sure that I meet people for who and where they are. I really believe in the importance of making sure that we have interpreters in the courthouse. I don't take chances because we have a very diverse community. Mm-hmm. And so with that community, we need to make sure that we have court-certified interpreters for every case that needs one so that I know what's happening and what's important to this family. And so just as an idea included in all that, so I talked about 2017. So in 2018, my number of family court cases increased.
From that 700 backlog plus the ones.
So never a backlog.
Increased,
never had a backlog.
Never a backlog.
Okay.
Okay, so let's clarify that since they said that there was a backlog along with those 50 cases that they found. So there was never a backlog.
And I've heard this backlog word so many times, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from because on the campaign trail, my opponent just always talks about, and I don't, something about a backlog. I was like, what is she talking about? So to the extent we were talking about 52 cases that were decided for the most part, because I did say in my statement, there were 2 cases that when I went through the entire list with the family court administrator, I realized that there were 2 cases I needed to address. I addressed those this past Monday. But I didn't get emails from lawyers saying, hey, we're waiting. So I just figured that out when I went through this list. And so I'm glad I did because I wanted to make sure those were addressed. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, this argument that there's a 52 case backlog and I'm walking around, I haven't done since 2017 was never true. And so to start with this premise and use it as campaign talking point, things you use in your campaign emails, as a way to promote yourself over a sitting judge, I just think is inappropriate because we all should have the integrity to speak truth.
And I would be concerned about anyone that wants the position of being a judge when you've already proven as a candidate that you have no problem having a challenged integrity. So I would be concerned about that, but that's part of the bigger challenge is community does not understand the role of judges or even how to research, and which is why, again, it is so important and why I'm so thankful that you're here tonight to explain this.
And judicial positions are probably one of the least understood. And I like the video that you played earlier, and not the WBTV video.
No, the yellow paint.
Yellow paint video. Mm-hmm. Because he talked about the judiciary also. He mentioned us. We're often forgotten.
Exactly.
And I also recognize that in not every state do we elect judges. In North Carolina, we do. And so for that reason, it's really important to do your research and to understand and get beyond the headlines. Because folks can say and twist things anyway. To say, I have experience in, doing whatever, ask what that experience is. Because it matters when you come to preside over cases that involve the community that is so diverse like the one we have.
And a lot of our forums and debates don't ask the questions relevant to the position the person is seeking.
And it's really hard, right? Because judges, we can't say anything. I can't tell you how to decide a case because I don't know how to decide until I have the facts and the circumstances and the law. Right. And so, again, we wonder always about making sure, what do you want? You want an unbiased judge who comes in with, open mind, with a knowledge of the law, who wants to hear your arguments. And I did that, and I'll go back to what you asked me, in 2018, in 968 hearings and trials in family court.
968?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, again, this is within the span. And in addition, I did more weeks in child support court. So I heard about 2,600 child support cases. So in that year, hearing well over 3,000 cases as one person, that was a lot. It was a lot. And I tried my hardest and I tried my best because the families needed me to. There were days where, and every judge is different, but for me, given my caseload and the fact that I got a large number of emergency custody orders. A lot of domestic violence cases were involved in some of my cases. I had a lot of emergencies. And so there was a period of time where I went for months without having lunch. I would come at 8:30 and I would leave at 6. And that took a toll. And so the one thing I think that when I say judges are people too, I even say it to my colleagues, because we have to exercise some self-care in order to care for the community. And if there is anything I wish I could, one of the things I wish I could have done better just in my first 2 years on the bench is recognizing how important it is for me to even take the 30 minutes to have a sandwich so that I could be rejuvenated and continue on.
So what does self-care look like for you today? With the experience and the knowledge you have, and we're kicking off, we're in February of 2020, new decade, all of that goodness that comes with the big 2020. Self-care, what does that look like for you today?
I don't know. And I really do think that this experience of knowing that despite how much we give of ourselves, with one poorly researched, ill-intentioned post in the media or on social media, it can throw life in a tailspin. I'm reevaluating what does that look like. And so for the last week, it's looked like not going on social media, right? Because I needed to make sure that, I was even. I have a child to take care of, and I don't have time to be up and down with my emotions and having her deal with the impacts of what people are saying that don't know me.
And
she
you need
knows
to protect
me.
your spirit.
Exactly.
Because it is draining. It is. I have conversations all the time about the fact that words matter. Words have power. How we utilize those words make an impact, because all it takes is that one person that's not going to listen to that full sentence, that's going to pull out one or two words and run with it. And it is so much harder to pull that train back when that negative train goes out versus that train of all your good work. And you have to constantly keep reminding people of everything that you've done. So the power of words, and well-intended, unintended, them doing an interview that clearly was biased. And that is the piece that I keep repeating, because it does not address any of the work that you've done for years. It was extremely biased. There was no context in which it was given, and that can cause so much pain. And I know for me, there was a level where I would withdraw to try to deal with it, because I'm thinking I'm shielding the family by trying to stay strong for them to not feel like you have to get involved. I'd say it for me in 2017, the one time, now you know my wife, Jaleesa, and her personality is this all the time. I'm all over the place. Hers is this. When she got upset and cussed somebody on because of social media, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm done. Y'all can have this. Right. I'm like, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give y'all an option. I'm gonna go ahead and run at large. I told y'all I was only gonna do 4 terms. That's 8 years. Here you go, y'all. Now I've thanked before, but I would thank again the 34,000 and some change plus individuals that voted for me. I love you, but I needed a break, because what I'm not gonna do is let that nonsense interfere with my marriage. 13 plus years and going. I found the one that gets me and understands all this chaos. I'm not letting you mess up my household because you're not happy. And once you recognize this, a lot of times that it's because of their unhappiness. And I'm going to try to think of it this way with media. I'm not going to blame. I used to blame reporters all the time. And I got to the point here. You saw videos like one of them. I laughed in their face and kept on walking. Somebody made that into a meme on Twitter. I thought it was hilarious, because I'm like, I don't need y'all. I do not need you. You need me. Let's just have a real conversation. Because of social media today, I'm like, God done gave me my own doggone podcast. I can say what the hell I want to say. I got Twitter. I got Facebook. Y'all need me for clicks. But I also recognize there have been times where reporters have taken good stories to their higher ups and their producers, and that's not the story the producer would let them present. So I'm going to try to look at it as not all reporters are evil. They're not all bad. They have someone they have to report to. That individual really controls the conversation. But if we get back to why you went to journalism school, and the fact that you were supposed to uncover the truth and just present unbiased information. Take the bias out of it. You make a decision on your own. That is not what happened in this case. Tonight is so important again because the community is hearing directly from you, not me saying, well, Aretha and I had a conversation and this is what I took from it. They get to hear, not only hear your knowledge, but they get to see your passion and see that this isn't a game for you. This isn't a stepping stone for you to just be like, okay, I'm going to check this box. That it is really because of that little girl who grew up off that red dirt road and played with her friends, and you all realizing that you can make a difference, that we have the woman that's sitting in front of us today who bust her tail, achieved a higher level of education, chose to go into law, to excel and become a judge, to look out for those other children, to let them know that there's somebody out there that cares for them. They get to see that. And that is why I'm over here, as you're talking, getting chills with a little bit of hair I have, getting chills because you can feel your love for community and you can feel the hurt when community chooses to jump on a negative opposed to recognize a truth that's right in front of them. What else you want us to know? Because I need you, and I'm glad you're talking a little bit about self-care, because you got to figure it out.
I'm getting there.
Because good black don't crack, but we can dry up if we don't take care of ourselves. So I need you to take care of yourself, because you're not going to do any of us. You're not going to do your daughter, your husband, mom, all the cousins, great aunts, uncles, everybody else, the community any good if you are not whole.
That's right. I'm focusing on it. I'll get there. Now I have to get to March 3rd first. So I'm going to get through that season.
Trust the process, trust the universe.
So I want to talk about, and I said, I always try to think of, a growth saying what the enemy means for evil will turn out for good. And so I want to try to think of the good. So now, I get certain platforms. And so I've decided to use every platform I have to talk about the children who are in foster care. And I do want to bring that out to our community because it's something we don't talk about enough. And the reality is, before I became a juvenile court judge, I don't think I talked about and recognized significantly the needs that our children in care have. We have amazing folks who work for the Department of Family Services and Youth and Family Services. We have amazing social workers and other leaders who step up and work hard every single day to take care of the 500 plus children in Mecklenburg County who are in the custody of the Department of Social Services and NRA care.
So I'm glad you're going to talk about foster care because I have a question for you. Because Jaleesa and I have thought about it for a couple of years, even though, okay, let me clarify that. I've thought about it for a couple of years. She told me as long as I had that part-time job that we're not doing that because then she would be raising a child. We have talked to a couple of different friends that are also in long-term same-sex relationships, married and or committed, that especially African Americans have challenges with getting access to foster black children. I have one set of friends of which we were talking about actually bringing them on the show at some point to share their experiences where they have helped older children, but not smaller children. But judges have assigned smaller children to non-black families that already have multiple children, that have not done any work to learn culturally about that black child, culturally about their hair, about conversations that they're going to need to have as they're maneuvering. We're trying to figure out how do we create a conversation about the impact of that. And I wanted to know if you've seen, are there challenges or obstacles that same-sex couples need to consider if they're looking to be foster care parents?
I have not seen that. And so it raises a good question in that in the cases in which I presided, I'm not sure, and I don't, I'm thinking out loud here, which is a bad idea. But I was trying to think of how many cases, if any, I had with same-sex couples serving as foster parents. And I don't have all 500 cases on my caseload. But I don't know the answer to that. And that's something I really want to look into. We have an amazing deputy director of post-custody services here in Mecklenburg County, Denise Steele Campbell, who I found to be someone who is always with an eye toward what's in the best interest of children, making sure that we are equitable in how we treat everyone that is within our system, the children, the parents, the foster parents, and making sure there is access to bring community together. Because what she believes in, and she shares my belief, that community is not exclusionary. Community is inclusive. And because of that, there's a role for everyone to help and support, especially the most vulnerable among us, children who've been abused and neglected and don't have anybody to take care of them. And so that is a conversation I would love to just explore, because I don't know if we're having that conversation. And if there are, I know I'm not a part of those yet. And if they are happening, I would like to be part of them, just to really get an understanding.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question. And believe it or not, I know it doesn't feel like it, but we have actually been at this for an hour.
Oh.
Right? Because when you're having genuine and really powerful conversation, it goes by quickly. So I put up behind us, for all of those that are watching, information. Again, it is election season, people, primary elections. The next primary election date is March 3rd. All voting places will be open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. That is election day. But as we mentioned earlier, early voting will start on tomorrow. So I wanted to also make sure that everyone knows that you can go to MEC, BOE, that is M Mary, ECK as in King, B as in boy, OE for Board of Elections.org. You can click on that and see a sample ballot specifically for your address. Also want to let you know, as of tomorrow, all libraries will be open. Beatty's Ford Road, Beatty Ray Thomas Center, Cornelius Town Hall, Uptown, Hal Marshall, Hickory Grove Library, Hornets Nest Pavilion, East Independence Library, Uptown Main Library, Matthews Library, Mint Hill, South Park Morrison Library, Huntersville, New Site Library, which is 4429 South Boulevard, because I know that doesn't make sense, New Site. Sugar Creek Library, UNCC Gym, University City, the old Pier 1, West Boulevard Library, Ballantyne area, and South Charlotte. All of them will be open. I am going to do a quick back in time on this day, February 12th in 1793, a day in Black history, because it is Black History Month, people. Congress passed the first fugitive slave law to implement the provisions in the Constitution. It stated that to reclaim an escaped slave, a master needed only to go before a magistrate and provide oral or written proof of ownership. The magistrate would then issue an order for the arrest of the slave. The slave was not given a trial in court or allowed to present evidence on their own behalf, including proof of having previously earned their freedom. The fugitive slave law angered many free blacks residing throughout the United States. In January of 1800, a group petitioned for Congress to repeal the fugitive slave law and abolish slavery. This petition, and others like it, sent by free blacks, was predictably ignored by Congress on the basis that blacks were not recognized by the Constitution and thus not their equals. People understand it is 2020. The attacks on black people, specifically black women, are still happening. Be educated, know your rights, do your research, get out and vote. No more excuses. I thank you, Judge Blake, for joining us. Please tune in as we will have Ms. Gina Esquivel joining us to discuss the 2020 census. Thank you for joining Square Media Network. I am LaWana Mayfield. This is Unapologetically Black. You can follow us on YouTube, on Facebook. Please like, share, stay engaged, stay in tune, stay black.